I am optimistic that we will begin to have two opportunities. One is to receive some remains in the not too distant future. We are dogged in trying to facilitate this as quickly as we possibly can.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And just to be clear, we have not yet received any.
That's correct, Senator. We have not yet physically received them.
That was Secretary of State Mike Pompeo delivering that update earlier this week. No remains of U.S. troops returned yet from North Korea. Around 7,700 U.S. troops are still unaccounted for from the Korean War. But Pompeo is optimistic about President Trump's agreement with Kim Jong-un to bring our nation's heroes home. And family members are still holding out hope that they will be reunited with their loved ones. Tonight, we follow up with two of the families who joined us before. First Lieutenant Robert Schmidt fought forward through the most brutal battle of the Korean War, but sadly never returned. And Captain John Henry Zimmerly went out on a night mission in Korea, but his plane disappeared and only questions remained. Here now, their family members still fighting to bring them home. Joan Morris is the niece of First Lieutenant Robert Schmidt, and John Zimmerly is the son of Captain John Henry Zimmerly. Welcome back to both of you. It is good to have you back with us. We got so much feedback from your stories, and I think people want so much for you to have the circle closed on what this situation has brought to your families. Joan, let me start with you. Just remind us about your Uncle Bobby's service.
Well, Uncle Bobby served in World War II for over 3 years, and then he came back to North Dakota, and he graduated with an ROTC degree, and he became an Army officer, and he was stationed in Japan, and then he went to Korea, and he was killed at the Chosin Reservoir on December 1st, 1950.
And John, your dad?
Yes, my father was an Air Force navigator. Went out on a small plane on a night mission in March of 1952. There was radio communication around 9 p.m., and that's the last we heard from them. No one knows whether they crashed into a mountain, whether they were shot down, whether they were taken captive. No one really knows. There are some documents that give us hints that some of them may have been in captivity, but even that is not positive evidence.
Joan, you know, obviously these are difficult circumstances, and you heard Secretary Pompeo say that they are committed to bringing them back. And what we know about some of the graveyards that were used and some of the situations, how difficult do you think it will actually be to see this through?
Well, I think it'll be very difficult. On one end, you're dealing with the North Korean government, who, even though it's a humanitarian type of issue, in the past has used the return of our soldiers' remains as a bargaining chip with the United States. The other issue that I am very worried about is the Department of Defense and their capabilities, their competence, and the overall direction that they're using as far as identifying the remains. And I say that because some of the remains were returned over 20 years ago, and they still have not been identified. The Department of Defense is not using updated DNA technology. They're using very expensive technology that takes 4 to 5 months for a test result to come in, where if they were using nuclear DNA technology, the test results would come in within a week. They're 10 times less expensive than the DNA tests that they're using now. And they have a higher degree of accuracy as far as identifying the particular soldier.
Yeah. I mean, John, you share that concern, I know, in terms of the response from the DOD and exactly where these remains are, and some of them are on U.S. territory.
Yes. In fact, the DPAA announced today that they made an identification of a person who was of an unidentified remains that's been buried in the Hawaiian cemetery for 65 years. That remains was tentatively associated with this particular individual. It took them 60 years to even read the document. They dug him up 4 years ago from the cemetery, and just now, 4 years later, are identifying him with the mitochondrial DNA that Joan is referring to, which is really antiquated.
Yeah. Joan, you know, I think so much of this is about this war getting the respect that it deserves. Is that part of what drives you in your mission for your family?
Yes.
I don't think it's the...
Sorry.
Joan, and then John. Go ahead, Joan.
I I don't think it's the overall view of the war. I think it's a very personal type of issue for our family. My grandmother was very concerned about the fact that my uncle did not have a proper burial. And when she moved, she sent letters to the Department of Defense indicating her new address and was there any updates or anything like that. And so I think we take it very personally, as this is something that, since that generation is gone, we're the ones that hopefully will be able to bring our Uncle Bobby home and have a proper burial.
John, quick thought on that, if you can.
Yes. We feel that our government has not shared all the information that they have with us over all these years, and now this is an opportunity for the media to put pressure on our government to release a lot of that information and a lot of the details on the remains.
We're trying to do just that with your help. So we'll stay on your story. We hope you'll come back, and our thanks to both of you. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
Controversial